Okay, so what we're going to go here is go through the year-long study, right? So our final presentation guide. Again, this final presentation you guys can either submit to me by completing it in class, or you can go ahead and just do a screen recording video and submit it that way if you don't want to do the public speaking side of it, but I suggest that you do. So let's just kind of walk through this, and then we'll talk about how to do various parts of it and what's expected. We'll go over the formalized rubric in class. This is meant to be more of just a reminder of how to do things. So step one, definitely don't leave it as saying engaging title or your name. Change those things, but again, make it important. Remember, our goal here is we're selling our product and we're using data to back our decisions. So on this slide, come up with a good sales pitch. Tell me why we should invest in your product, what's your business plan. And again, create a problem that you're solving. So the good idea of the sales pitch is that you're letting people know that whether they realize it or not, this is something that they need, and that's going to improve their life significantly. Maybe some creative pictures, right? So again, our product doesn't have to be something totally new and unique. Now, if it is, and you could find like some type of ideal concept for it, maybe draw something by hand, or just describe it, have some pictures of the various parts. Again, get your audience involved. Okay, here we're looking to talk about how you collected your data. So we want to use our vocab, so we want to avoid any bias in our questioning, the interview effect, so perhaps we collected things digitally. Talk about the sampling techniques you utilized and how you ensured it was random. Here is going to be our quantitative question, right? So we have our first quantitative question. Talk about why you asked it, what do you think this was going to tell you about your product, and again, how do we make sure that that data was going to be quantitative so that we didn't have to do a bunch of data cleaning on the back end? Here's going to be the visualization piece for our quantitative question. So we're going to make a box plot and a histogram, both of which we'll talk about how to do in Excel. We will be using Excel for all the visualizations project. That way you guys have that as a good background when you get into college. And then we're going to just comment on what we see about it, whether it looks normal, if it's skewed, just anything you can kind of pull away that's of interest. So our confidence interval and hypothesis test, we're going to run these here the same way you have all year, so you can either do those in GeoGebra or in your calculator, depending on which way you're doing it. We'll kind of show some examples in class here how this should be formatted. Same thing for our second quantitative question here. So again, we'll go through the visualization in this video, confidence interval, hypothesis test. That's all going to be in GeoGebra or the calculator. If you're curious on how to do those in Excel, ask me. I'm just not going to expect you to do that. But if you want to learn, I'd be more than happy to teach you. Then we get into our categorical questions here. So again, same prompt here. Why did we ask the question? What was it supposed to tell me? Here we're just going to utilize a bar graph. So we're just going to go ahead and, again, look for if there's any normality in it. If there's a certain category that's equally popular as others, so if it does somehow have that shape to it. Typically our bar graphs here, we're not worried about normality. As we talked about in previous chapters, the Pareto chart, if we could order things, that's great. If not, again, we're just looking for the most popular categories. Going through here again. So we're just kind of looking confidence interval and hypothesis test here. So again, calculator, GeoGebra, just make sure you show all your work. Second categorical question. So why'd you ask it? How is this going to help with your business model? You know what? Let me go ahead and fix this. This is actually a typo here. Let's go. There we go. So we don't look for normality in bar graphs. That's my apologies there. So we're just going to look for the most popular categories, all that good stuff. Sorry about that. Again, bar graph deals with quantitative data. Or sorry, a bar graph is going to be our categorical data. So if we're looking for normality, we're more so using a histogram with quantitative results there. So my apologies for that confusing type. All right, again, same thing. We're going to rock our confidence interval here and a hypothesis test for this categorical question. We're going to talk about what they mean. And again, the idea here with these tests, so the confidence interval, it kind of gives you an idea of where you can expect your sales to be. So for example, if I was dealing with a categorical question here, I'd be looking, let's say if I had different color variations for my product, and I said, okay, blue, in my sample I had 60% of people say they preferred blue. So maybe I would do a hypothesis test saying it was greater than 50%. So I could say that greater than 50%, if I could show that my confidence interval and my hypothesis test are supporting that claim, then I would probably carry mostly blue in my product line because that would make the most sense to me. That would kind of maximize my sales there. So, again, just kind of make sure we constantly use our data to support our business model. Alright, so moving on. So, final sales pitch here. So again, it's kind of highlighting the key things you found in your data. So means, averages, those confidence intervals and hypothesis tests, and their results. Now, this last part here was done by a former student where they really kind of summarized well. So I want you guys to see what that looks like. So they kind of broke it down what their data supported. So they used their confidence interval to figure out that they get $3 and $4 per student. And they're saying the purchasing the chips is $1. So they did a little bit of research. They were selling chips, so they went on there and they found out how much could they buy bulk orders of chips for, whether it was on Walmart.com, eBay, Amazon, whatever it may be. And again, so just more so the interpretation, which in class we'll speak more to this. This again was kind of a summary. So they talked about the different sales they would make here. So again, the key idea here in that final part is that you're selling your product, you're getting people to agree that yours is a great idea. Now, the big thing that we want to go through in this is the visualization part, because we've worked with Excel, but we want to work more with it. So, let's say we're starting this from scratch. So again, in our course, we actually already collected all our data for a semester, but let's say you transferred into the class, you lost this file. Let's go from scratch. So my big suggestion would be collecting your data through a digital survey. You can use paper, but you'd have to kind of talk a little bit more to how you avoided things like the interview effect if you were doing paper, and you're going to have to input all that stuff by hand. So the data analysis piece of that is going to be a bit more time consuming. But if we want to go ahead and create a digital one, so to use a Google form, we all have Google Drive, it's free, right? So we go to New, go to More, and then choose a Google form. So when you create a Google form, or you can go ahead and give it a title, do your questions. So we want to ensure that when we're doing our categorical questions, so if I said like favorite color, and again, you'd want to include like what you're talking about here. So which of the following colors would you prefer for my heated steering wheel cover, or for whatever you're selling, t-shirts, shoes. These we want to make multiple choice. We definitely don't want to collect categorical data with an open-ended question, because as we know, computers are computers. If something has a capital letter, it views it as different than something with a lowercase letter. So again, whenever you're making your categorical question, make it multiple choice. That way, when people submit things, it's easier to summarize later on. Going over here. So let's say we created our form, we sent it out, right? So we can get a link here. So if I want to send this, click on this little paper clip here, right? There's our link. We could send it out. People can take it. So what I did here, I'm just going to use a form we've already created. So I'm going to use quizzes. You can see I only got 100, so let's look at this, right? So let's say I had a questionnaire here. And then I went on over to this. So to get our data out, give me a second, let me zoom in a bit. Okay, so if we want to go ahead and pull that data, so once it's collected, we go over to responses. Also, heads up, guys, I reuse these quizzes. I make different ones each year. So if you're watching this and you're wondering if this is going to be the same quiz next year, it won't. All right, going into here. So we can see we all did really well on this quiz. That was nice. As we look at things here again, so to pull this out into a spreadsheet to get that raw data, we have two options. We can either just download it directly, so download as a CSV. I prefer to just click this button. So if you click this button, where it says View Responses and Sheets, it'll actually go and create a spreadsheet for you, which I already did. And again, it'll load automatically here. There we go. Again, all these people did really well, but we're good to go there. So, if we're looking here, what we want to go ahead and do is copy this data into Excel. Now, the reason we want to use Excel is I just prefer the desktop version. It's what we typically work with in class. Google Sheets does a lot of great things, but that's what we want to go ahead and work with there. So let's go ahead and copy everything. So to copy everything, we want to go ahead and click here. So from Google Sheets, if you click this top left thing here, so this open box, it highlights everything in there. So to go ahead and draw that in, right? So we want to pull that, we want to put in Excel. We're going to right click and hit copy. So we've now copied everything from here. So if we open up Excel, we can now go ahead and paste. So you want to click in cell A1. Now, this is a part that's going to be kind of important. So it's the way we pull in our data. So what we want to do here is right click, and then we go to paste, Let's see which one of these looks better here. So give me a second. Don't click anything yet. Let's see which one of those is going to look better. There we go. Okay, so the one we want to choose when we right click here is we're going to go ahead and choose this one to the right where it says Match Destination Formatting. Now, this was a quiz that I gave you guys, so I didn't have a whole lot of numerical data. So I'm going to go ahead and create some real quick. So I'm going to pause the video and just go ahead and create some quantitative and categorical questions here. Again, I just want to show you an example of how to go ahead and copy, paste, import that data. First thing we can think about, though, if we're going to clean this up a bit, is stuff we don't need. We don't need a timestamp. All right, so we can go ahead and get rid of that. Any stuff you don't need from there, typically the timestamp and their email address if you asked for one, you can just delete. So I highlighted these. I'm going to right-click and then choose delete. All right, they go away. So I'm going to pause the video for a second here, and I'm going to go ahead and pull in some numerical and categorical data, just so we can go ahead and look at how to do these visualizations. Okay, so what I did here was just create some sample data. So let's say I was opening a pet store, and I wanted to know how much people would pay for a variety of different animals here. So the first column here I had was how much they'd pay. And again, I abbreviated a bit here, but that's going to be our quantitative data there. So I'm going to do one quantitative question and one categorical and walk through those visualizations. So for the quantitative question, we wanted to go ahead and talk about the differences between our histogram and then our box plot for that. So as we want to graph these, what we want to do here is you're probably on the Home tab now. Go ahead and click on Insert. So what that's going to do is give us our charts here and our visualization. So let's go ahead and click on column A. I'm going to do my quantitative first. So if I want to get a histogram, as we've done before, and choose this middle option here. So the two different histograms, one gives us a kind of a predictive line here and orders our data. So we can kind of look at it that way. I prefer, as opposed to that, is go ahead and looking here at just our default histogram, right? So it just splits it up into bins for us. So we're going to always use the one on the left. So that gives me my histogram here. Now, again, we want to make a title. So I was talking about how much they'd pay. So let's see, purchase price for pet. You can say animal, pet, whatever you want to. And again, we talked about formatting. I try to make your charts look nice, right? So this is really not visually friendly. I wouldn't use that. Again, make something look good here. So again, pick what you think is best. Again, we never want three-dimensional stuff. We talked about back on you and how that makes graphs misleading. But again, you could change the color around, you could change the style. Again, make it what you think is best here. So again, talking about this graph, I can see it's kind of normal, right? I see a little bit of a good curve. It is normal-ish, right? We could talk how it's a little lower in the middle than to be expected if we were fitting from a true, normally distributed thing. But this is close enough where we could definitely do some approximations with it. So we also need a box plot. So again, I'm going to kind of click off here. Go ahead and click column A again. Go to Insert. And to get a box plot, we're going to click here again, and then just go down to the box plot here. And again, this is going to be also talking about the same here. So purchase price for pet. So we can kind of look at this here, and we have our nice analysis. So this is very normally distributed. It looks much more normal in the box plot than it does in the histogram. But again, we can kind of comment on that. So I could talk about my key takeaways here. So we can figure out our Q1, so on and so forth. We can talk about those numbers here. So we can go ahead and talk about here, if I'm looking, if you actually just highlight this. So instead of doing the calculations to the side, so if I just drag it over there, it shows me what that value is. It says it's 54. So the median here is going to be 54. My Q1 here is at 30. My min, over here, is, let's see, it's saying 0 down there. So we got a 0 somewhere in there. And then my maximum is up here at 100. Now again, yours might be different. So I happen to have a 0 in there. Apparently someone didn't want to buy a pet, which is fine. But again, if you want to go ahead and just list off those 5 numbers, that's our 5-number summary. That's the key idea there. So remember that there's 25% of the data between each of these. So I could say definitively that 50% of people would pay between my Q1, so 30, and my Q3 up here at 76.5. So again, between each one of these jumps, we have 25% of our data. So again, it could pull away statistics, something to sell off of. is that I could say 50% of people would be comfortable with paying $30 to $76.50. So I could say 50% of people are in that interval. So if I charge that amount somewhere in there, I know that I could have a good portion of my population comfortable with that price for their animal of choice. And again, you're going to do that for both questions. So again, I'm just doing it for one and showing you the interpretations here. Here we said most people would pay between 24 and 48. So you can talk about those more frequented bins here, right? So we're getting a frequency here. This is just a frequency histogram, no percentages here. And then same thing maybe here. So it seems like there's a little bit of difference. Like some people are kind of really comfortable in this interval, but again, some people who may want a different type of animal might be more comfortable up here. All right, now that we've done our visualizations for our quantitative question, and again, like feel free to adjust these, like make them, you know, different colors. Maybe you want to make this one green or orange or whatever it may be, right? Again, get yourself comfortable with the data, make it look how you want it to look. So now let's go ahead and make a bar graph here to analyze our categorical data. So to do that, I go ahead and highlight the column, again go to Insert, and then I'm going to choose my first option here. Oh, wait a minute. Totally forgot to teach you guys something. Well, not teach you something. We've done this before. But we need to actually get some counts here. So to make a bar graph, we need to go ahead and do a little bit of calculations. So to go ahead and create this table here, what we're going to go ahead and do is create some counting. So we're going to count how many times this occurs. So let's go ahead and type this out a bit. So I'm going to say number of number of selected. And I'm just going to go ahead. I had 3 choices, so I'm going to say over here cat. Then I have dog. And then actually, let's go make it a little more organized. Right, we'll put it underneath here. It doesn't matter where you put it. I'm just trying to keep it organized. So under that variable, I'm going to say cat, dog, and then fish. Those are my 3 choices. So again, whatever options you gave 3 for either way. Now over here, we're actually going to put a little formula to go ahead and get those counts. So first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and click, and we're going to type equals, and then we're going to say count if. So it's telling it where to count, and then what to look for. So I'm going to say count if, and then I'm going to put a parenthesis. We need to tell it where to look. So column B happens to be where my data is. So I'm going to start with there. So I'm going to type capital B, colon, capital B. That just says look at all of column B. You put a comma, and then now we need to tell it what to look for. So I'm going to say this is my count for cat. So I'm going to go ahead and left click here on cat. Close your parenthesis and press enter. So we can see we have 20 occurrences of the word cat. So instead of counting by hand, again, it's not a terribly lengthy data set. It could be done, but this is just a faster way. Here we're going to look for count if. We're going to say the same thing, B to B. And then we're looking for dog. So put my parenthesis. We got 13 of those. And then I want to look at fish. So count if, B to B. And then I'm going to go ahead and say fish. There we go. So that gives us our distribution there. Okay, now that we've got a nice little frequency table set up, right, we know how many times each person chose a given item, we can go and create our bar graph. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and left click and just highlight my choices. You don't want to highlight any titles here, just the choices that you had. So I had, these are my 3 options, my multiple choice of the categorical question. And again, you could type this anywhere. So if you had a bunch of rows full of stuff here, it's cool, just type it over here. The formulas are going to be the same. So I just had room here. But again, you could type it anywhere you want and it'll still be able to work. So wherever you have it, it's over here, does not matter. Just go ahead and highlight exactly what we need. And then we're going to go back to Insert, choose up here in the top left, and it's just the very first option. And sometimes in the preview it doesn't show the labels on the bottom, but once you go ahead and click it, then they pop up. So again, we got a bunch of different options here. We can change our color theme. As always, want to give it a title. So this would be, you can call it like popular pets. We could say like chosen pet, whatever you want. I'm just going to call mine popular pets. So which pets people chose. So if I'm commenting on this, I can see here that an equal amount of people in my survey wanted either cats or fish. So apparently dogs were the least popular one in this example. But again, it might be different depending on your data. Ideally, you've collected more data as well, as we talked about first semester, that goal being 200 data points. That kind of covers it here, though. So that's our just of all the visualization we need. And again, the confidence intervals you can go ahead and complete either using your graphing calculator or GeoGebra, as we've talked about. And again, if you want to learn how to do that in Excel, feel free to ask. I'd be happy to teach you. Again, so hopefully we feel really comfortable with this project. Again, let's make use of that in-class time to get this done and ready to go for our presentation. Again, either in person or video, either way is cool. And the rubric will be discussed in class.